Dr. Emma Gray and I'm the lead clinical psychologist at the British CBT and Counselling Service. I'm also the author of the book and new YouTube series, How to Get Pregnant Fast. Now, this information is based on my professional experience as a clinical psychologist working with couples struggling with infertility, but also on my own personal experience of infertility. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I think sometimes it's it's interesting but also helpful to know a little bit about the person who's written what you're either reading or listening to. So my fertility journey started when I was about 19 and I was diagnosed with a syndrome called polycystic ovaries and was pretty much told that I would not be able to conceive naturally. I then went for the next 15 years without a menstrual cycle. So I wasn't ovulating, I wasn't having a period. But during that time, I qualified as a clinical psychologist, and part of the work that I was doing was with couples who were struggling with infertility. And through that work, I learned a lot about how to prepare your mind and body for pregnancy. So when I met my partner and we decided to start a family, I put that stuff into practice. And I think it was about 9 to 12 months it took of using everything I knew, and I kick-started my menstrual cycle. We started to try to conceive, and I conceived really quickly within a couple of months. So that was wonderful. We were a bit surprised, but I carried that baby to term. I had that baby. I was about 35, so I was a little bit older. So at that point, I think I fulfilled criteria for a geriatric mother, which is always nice to hear. Then about a year later, we decided to try again. Again, I conceived very quickly, following everything I knew to get my body and mind in a good place. Conceived again within a couple of months, carried that pregnancy to term, had another little boy. Then about 18 months later, we tried again. I got pregnant again very quickly, carried that pregnancy to term, had another little boy. At that point, I was 39. And then I think it was maybe a couple of years later, so I was about 41, and we decided to try for a fourth and final baby. And again, I got pregnant very quickly, but this time I had what's called a missed miscarriage. So I got to about 10 weeks, I went for a scan, and there was no heartbeat. It was a big shock because despite knowing everything I knew about how common miscarriage was, how, the more pregnancies you have, the more likely it is to happen, how I knew that it was very common or more common as you kind of get over a particular age, it was still a massive shock because up until this point, this hadn't been my experience. So my partner and I took a little bit of time to get our heads around it, and we decided to try again. But unfortunately, I got pregnant quickly. I think probably the first month that I tried, but again I lost the pregnancy about 7 weeks. So that was tricky because obviously I was aware that one miscarriage is quite common, but two less so. So we tried again. I got pregnant again very quickly. This time it went a bit better. I had a scan at 7 weeks, we saw a heartbeat. I had a scan at 10 weeks, we saw a heartbeat. But then I went for my dating scan at 13 weeks, and I think that the baby had died a couple of days before I'd had the scan. So, this was very difficult because I was aware that as only 1% of people experience 3 consecutive miscarriages. So I think we thought at this point that maybe we were pushing our luck. The universe was trying to tell us something, and maybe I was just too old. I think at this point I was pushing 43. I think at this point. So we decided to focus on the 3 children we had. Life was already very busy. I suppose we weren't actively not trying. So 5 months later, I started feeling really quite unwell, and we discovered I was pregnant again. This was pretty nerve-wracking. We weren't expecting it, but I carried a pregnancy to term, and I had a 4th boy at 44. So probably this book should be How to Get Pregnant with a Boy. Anyway, there we go. I guess the main reason that I'm sharing this with you is that it's possible to have 4 children despite being well over 35, despite being told that you're infertile and that you'd never be able to get pregnant naturally, and despite having 3 consecutive miscarriages, you can still end up with 4 children. I hope this is helpful to hear this story, particularly if you're struggling to get pregnant or you keep having miscarriages. The stuff in this series, in the book, it can help you. It can help you. So please either read the book or watch the YouTube series, and if it's helpful, please like, subscribe and share with your friends. Good luck with your fertility journey. I'll see you soon.